Hi, guys. Today we're going to be talking about the age of exploration and everything that it entailed with transitioning from the Crusades and wanting to know what else is out there and empires beginning to grow. Go ahead and get out your pens and your highlighters and make sure to take notes. The age of exploration. So let's just get some preliminary facts straight first, and I'm going to read straight from the slide. So if you remember from before midterms, you have Constantinople. It was a key trading center, a bustling kind of metropolis for both the northern and southern Silk Road. But once it fell and it was conquered and taken over by the Ottoman Empire, trade along the Silk Road was greatly interrupted. And so, what this led to was a lot of more expensive items, hard to find items, and even a supply and demand issue. It says right here the Northern Silk Road was controlled by the Empire of Trezenban, which is basically the people or the Ottomans who came in and took over Constantinople. And this led to people looking for cheaper products, better products, and just expansion in general and different trade routes to get access to more products. So that is a kind of a reason behind an enduring understanding the age of exploration. Go ahead and highlight that because that's pretty important to know that the fall of Constantinople and the trade that was interrupted along the Silk Road was one of the reasons for the age of exploration. The people of Europe had been introduced to new items during the Crusades also. So the demand for these items, especially in Europe, began to grow. The Crusades, remember, was wars fought between the Christians and the Muslims from around 1096 to 1270. After the Crusades eventually ended, again, Europeans continued to demand spices such as nutmeg, ginger, cinnamon, pepper, all of which added flavor to these very bland foods that Europe had made prior. So the supply and demand was a huge factor in fostering this age of exploration. You can charge higher prices if there was small supply, or if there was a lot of supply, then you can compete in how much lower you can get your prices to sell more items. So these are some of the kind of economic reasons behind the age of exploration. More highlight, and it's there in red, the three G's: gold, God, and glory. These are the main reasons that countries explored: to gain wealth from themselves and their country, to spread their religion, and for riches. Plain and simple. A lot of people or in countries wanted to gain a trade monopoly in Asia. There were myths of these cities of pure gold that were on these trade routes. So a lot of people were taking on risk, asking for investors from kings and queens and countrymen to get a boat. Here's an example. Let me go back. To get a boat and to get on the high seas. People didn't know you could die of dysentery, cholera, bloody diarrhea, all of these really horrendous diseases. But the risk um, didn't seem to matter to a lot of explorers. They wanted to get out and attempt. Question, highlight. How did the Crusades impact cultural diffusion? Cultural diffusion is basically the spread of culture as exploration begins to take place. When the Crusades came, it opened a whole new door of opportunity in travel. Feudalism was not done away with until the end of the Crusades, but thousands of people begin to elevate their class. When you elevate your class, you get more money, you get to explore, and you bring with you your culture when you explore. So just FYI. So key things on this slide, the three G's: spreading, getting money, spreading your religion, and bringing notoriety to your country, and cultural diffusion, and willing to take a risk to explore. Here are some of the timeline of the explorers. In our next lessons, we are going to break down the explorers from each country. The main countries were Spain, England, Great Britain, Portugal, the Netherlands, and France. The largest empire in Europe wanted to keep expanding. So the American colonies provided natural resources. They're going to talk about this Columbian exchange, which eventually will lead to a smallpox breakout in the Native Americans in the US. But we'll talk about that later. This Columbian exchange consists of raw materials that you can get from the Americas, like wood. Then you send it to England. They take that wood and they make chairs. Then they pick up slaves and sell them and do the same thing. Australia was used as a prison colony for jail overflow, and there was a widespread of an exchange of animals, plants, cultures, human population, and of course diseases. But we'll get into that on the Columbian Exchange a little later in the lesson. So let's talk about the ships and the inventions. These are very important. Highlight caravel. Here's a picture of caravel, invented by Prince Henry the Navigator at his navigation school. It was a favorite among the Portuguese, had several openings underneath for you can store both human cargo and regular cargo. It had a strong rudder for good maneuverability through the rough seas. It could be operated by a small crew from 10 to 25 men and could interchange for square sails for triangular ones. Square sails allowed for faster speeds with little wind. So these were great inventions, this caravel along the ships of the age. Inventions, these are very important. You need to know all three. Highlight compass, astrolabe, and calculating longitude. If you need to pause for this slide, you can. The advancements in the field of navigation with these inventions is what pushed the age of exploration along their way. You have the compass. Only instruments that pointed in a northern direction were huge for navigation. Old compasses were made out of magnetized and iron needle, kind of like you remember from the Disney movie Pocahontas. They later evolved into a painting disc with directional arrows with a rotating brass spin that always pointed due north. The astrolabe, kind of like a telescope type of thing, measured latitude while sailing and determined your position north or south of the equator, so you could know in which direction you were sailing. It measured the angle between the horizon and a celestial body like the North Star, for example. You can go to a chart called an ephemeris and find the parallel that corresponds with the specific star on a specific day. So it helped even kind of pioneer with calendars. Calculating longitude, it involved determining the speed of a ship, compass, direction, and the time of day. You have the hourglass. Speed was measured by how fast a piece of wood would float to the end of the ship to the bow, and time was taken using sundials or hourglasses. So you have hourglasses, the astrolabe, the compass, and caravel, all huge inventions during the age of exploration. So we're excited. We're going to talk a little more about who explored and continued on some of the civilizations that will begin to spring up due to the age of exploration. But keep in mind, the Aztecs, Incas, Mayas, and the African civilizations, they were very sophisticated even before exploration. Keep that in mind.